All right, it is 5:30. We are here today to discuss Fair Board finances, especially regarding the payment of utilities with the Board of County Commissioners. Commissioner Williams and Commissioner Corn are present. The purpose is to look at some of the things that Bonner County has been paying for versus what the fair has been paying for, and to use the opportunity for some housekeeping issues. I think, Samantha, you cleared up the signature on what the auditor needed. We've gotten that over there to them. Has the Fair Board produced its budget, which is supposed to be published in January? And so have you sent that over to the county clerk? Yes. Can we send that to the clerk and to the Board of Commissioners? Thank you. Was that my only housekeeping thing? I think so. Okay, with that, let's start with the big one. One of the things that, and looking at a review of bills, we found that Bonner County has been paying a water sewer bill for the fairgrounds in the fiscal year 2023. We paid $38,345.27 for the fairgrounds water and sewer. The fair does collect fees associated with water and sewer, and during some discussions with the fair manager identified that the fair had not budgeted to make that payment. And in a review of historical records, it appears that the fair hasn't been making that payment, but that the county has been making that payment without an agreement between the two. So with that, I want to hand it over to members of the Fair Board, and so that we're clear online is that, so we have Commissioner Williams, Commissioner Corn, and then let's introduce with your titles of the Fair Board so that people can see, and then let's slide a microphone because you guys are also Fair Board, and although people do attend your meetings, in this one, we want to make sure people know who you are. So you can go first.
Okay, I'm Tim Mahan, the chairman of Fair Board.
I'm Jody Russell. I am the vice chair.
Mark Knapp, I'm the fair manager.
Tanya Johnson, Fair Board member.
Gail Curlis, Fair Board member.
Quentin Tucken, Fair Board member.
Ben Wood, Fair Board member.
Samantha Schmidt, Fair Board treasurer.
Leila Blackwood, Fair Board member and secretary.
Okay. I didn't want them to all have to get up. It was easier to. So do you want to open with the fair's position on the bills that we reviewed? We reviewed this in an open meeting with the county, at a county meeting, and came up with this. And you guys had some thoughts and ideas about these particular payments at the county. And I'll be clear, the county didn't budget to make these payments. The budget has just been paying it. And so there isn't an agreement between the two. So I'll turn it over to Tim then.
Okay, so what we're looking at is the fact that Fair Board and the Fairgrounds hasn't budgeted to pay these bills either. County's been paying them. We think that we need to, that we're going to ask for the Fair Board, for the County Board of Commissioners or the county to go ahead and finish paying this year. And then for the next year, budgeting a line item for us for that payment to be into our budget.
To be clear, are you saying that you're asking for the county to continue to pay it throughout 2025, but then that we actually budget to pay the bill for the fair, or that you guys do it in your own budget?
We draw the money from the county as we do for like ribbons, and then we would pay the bill.
That means we pay the bill.
Correct.
Correct, okay. With our money, so you'd pay the bill with our money is the way you're saying it.
Yeah.
Mark?
Just make a quick point is we do not charge fees for water because we've never had expenses for water. So we don't charge any sort of usage fee or utility fee for the use of water. Never have. So that's not like we're collecting fees for water usage and not paying the bill.
So when they hook up campsites, they don't pay for water?
They pay a flat rate, and then it's usually for electricity because that's the only thing that we could need.
So
when we set and had our fee schedule meeting, we set those fees based upon, they create a flat rate based upon usage from the previous year. Not on, so we've never seen these water bills. And we have no way to separately meter the campground from anywhere else on the fairgrounds without infrastructure set up. So you made a notation that we charge fees. We've never charged any fees, nor do we bill for any sort of water utility because we were unaware of whatever usage or cost of it.
So I'm gonna ask the question of when we're providing water, because we're on Sandpoint Water there, right?
Correct.
And you get a bill for water,
We don't.
for other services, you guys do get a bill, because I thought it was paid in a different way, because when we looked at your account with Sandpoint Water, they identified that you might have a leak, so.
Right, how the meters are set up on the property are billed differently, but we don't never gotten a bill from Sandpoint City Utility for water bill at all whatsoever. So the ones that have been identified in this handout here for the fairgrounds, the dump station and the playground is all new from when we got it approximately 60 days ago. So we've never billed for any sort of utility for water at all because we never got the bill, never
Okay.
knew our usage. So I just want to clear that up. It's not like we're billing any customers or anything else like that for water and just not paying.
Okay. All right, any comment from you, Miss Jody?
Just that historically, that exactly what Mark and Tiff said, we have never paid or seen a water bill. So historically, we have never passed that on to any customers that are at the fairgrounds. The only thing we have charged for is the electric use, and we use that based on what we have paid the years before.
And I guess on this, to be clear, I think this is more of an open discussion, so as you guys have a question, jump in with your question, especially as department heads. So for me, when I look at the fair and I look at the water bill that's generated from the fair, I guess I'm looking for thoughts from other people on why the Bonner County budget would pay for the fair water bill when we don't pay for the electricity, and if it's a matter of it needs to be budgeted and built into the costs, then it, in a way, with the whole county budget is doing, it's a little bit of a redistribution versus a fee that's coming out of the fair, specifically, because you guys take in different rates for like booth rates and things like that. Why wouldn't we? Because in a way, the managing of the infrastructure is inclusive of electricity and should be inclusive of water. Why wouldn't that be something that, if your argument was have the county continue to pay, but that you guys need to budget for it for your next cycle so that you have the funds to pay? Because my next question is going to be, do you have the funds to pay for your own water bills? Because the county has paid for the big water bill, which comes after the fair. So we've already crossed that.
So I do have one thing to say, and that is that when you start looking at this amount of money, we already primarily base our budget on sponsorships. So we are going to the community and asking them to help support what is happening at the fairgrounds and help with the events. And when we go and start asking our sponsors now for basic utilities, that's kind of hard for those businesses to swallow when that money is typically going towards the events that we are putting on. And now we have to take off part of that money to pay for these other things. And on top of it, you have the dump station and the water fill-up station right there that is hit super hard in the month of August. And when that was put in for the county, and there was no meter put on there. So people can just go in, fill up their water, which is a great thing for the community, but that doesn't benefit the fairgrounds.
Also, we have a number of events that go on there, and some of right now, the events that we have, particularly 4-H related events and things, we provide a lot for them, a lot of the cost. And we give them reduced rates because we're there to support the 4-H. And if we had to raise the rates on, say, rental for the outdoor arena for a week, for a horse camp or something like that, it's gonna make that not affordable for them to put on that event. Since the outdoor arena is one of the big users of water. And So we're kind of caught between servicing the community and making money. And we could raise rates, but we're going to price part of the community out of being able to use the county fairgrounds.
Mhm.
So. But
Can I add just-
Only you have to use a microphone. That's the only, so if you guys want to take it on, you can leave that one on your side and he can just take the one standing up and we can pass it.
I don't know which way to do.
You can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you can sit with that one. It's fine.
Okay, this is a little,
You're good. It's not amplified. It's just for Zoom.
okay. So the only thing I was gonna say is just looking at the rates and everything, that the biggest usage of water that we have, as Tim mentioned, was just the water truck, watering the outdoor arena, watering the roads, around the fairgrounds, just keeping the dust, dust control where there's where there's not asphalt. With that being said, just something to keep in mind. One, our water truck is dilapidated, to say the least. In fact, we had to borrow a county water truck for much of the fair, just because we couldn't even hardly use ours. Two is that water doesn't actually have to be potable water. We're just watering. So what I'm saying is that we could probably cut our usage down quite a bit in the month of July and August, or months of July and August, by using non-potable water. But right now, the problem is we don't have a water truck that could make it off the grounds. So again, kind of goes back to those cost things. What do we do? The fairground has historically always just had hand-me-down equipment, and the water truck that we had worked great to go, around the grounds. But that's about as far as it's going to go. So looking at the water bill, thinking maybe we can cut that down by 20 grand a year by using non-potable water. That might go a long ways to buying a water truck. None of which the water bill or a new water truck, I don't know. I know at this point in time, the fairgrounds doesn't have the money for. And how, I just put that out there as a discussion, something to think about.
I think that's a good suggestion, because I think part of the problem is because nobody paid attention to who was paying the bill. When the bill comes is why people are saying, well, that's a really high bill, because that's why we're here. But your suggestion of why are we using potable water when we're just throwing it back on the ground and we didn't need to pay for expensive water to throw on the ground is a reasonable thing. And that's part of how much would we reduce this particular bill? Because you get one really huge bill, which is this bill that's 38,000 essentially is what we're looking at. But does it really need to be that if it's potable water? One of the difficult things of managing the fair is there is a balancing of people have to pay their share of what the fair is offering, because if you continue to draw on the county budget, then the county as a whole can't move forward in the direction it needs to. And if you look at our budget cycle, we gave quite a bit extra money this last budget cycle to the fair. And so that every time the county budget puts money outside of county infrastructure, it lowers what we can do as a county. And so on both ends, there's responsibility, because we need to know we're only paying for what we budgeted for, because there's responsibility on the county end of how do we not see we're paying for water? And this goes back not just 1 year, 2 years. It's basically looks like the lifetime of the fair. No one paid attention to who was paying the water bill, but magically the bill got paid. So now we have to decide, well, who should pay the water bill? And there is a balance of, we need to ensure the sponsorship doesn't get negatively impacted, but we also can't give so much away that you're supplementing the budget of the fair through the county as a whole, because we are also at a rock and a hard place of what we can tax and use that fund for. Because we did give an extra $20,000 for ribbon, and correct me on the other dollar amount that we gave. So that's 210,000 that the county budget gave to the county fair. And then when you count that we're paying the water bill, it's about $300,000 a year that we're giving the fair, with the fair saying, well, we don't want to raise the rates. We're trying to do something for the community. But then the question is, are we really, if we're just passing the debt to the county to do?
But wasn't some of that money that we asked for, that we were granted wasn't that money that was already earmarked for fairgrounds or for Fair Board that came out of taxpayers' dollars. It was already set aside, but we had not used that money in 2023, 2022. And so it can't just go back into the general funds. Am I correct?
Some of the
I am
money,
correct.
some
On
of that-
some of that, not all of it, but
some of that money
it.
was that. And
Mhm.
so when you look at an account like that, which brings up a good example, why is the county supplementing the water if there is an account with, and I think it was interest that was being earned on one of the accounts. How do we not include that in the infrastructure of the fair if the fair isn't going to charge a rate for the use of water if we're not redistributing? Because we have increased, what was your booth rate increase this season? There was a significant percentage increase on booth rates.
It's not an increase on booth
Booth
rates, it was
rates.
the only booth rate that had an increase was just for the rodeo for 2 days. So it wasn't for the fair, so it was just for those, the rodeo committee could set, was allowed to set their.
When you have events and someone reserves an event, I thought the
Oh,
rate went
I'm
up.
sorry,
You're talking the fee
You're
schedule.
Fee schedule, yeah.
That has nothing to do with fair.
I'm sorry,
That's usage.
yeah, so ask your question, I'm sorry.
So what was the increase in that rate? When someone wants to rent a space at the fair, the rate went up
It's not at the fair.
on the fairgrounds.
They would be depending upon what building they would use, and we would look at, like, we looked at our usage from last year. And broke it down pretty much by the hour, right? Just to be common sense. The fairgrounds infrastructure for utilities is not set up in a perfect fashion where every single building has its own utility. Meter, right? So if you go out to the fairgrounds, not every single building has its own water, gas, and electric meter. And so with how we know that it's set up, we tried to find out what our usage was last year and pass that on at either per day or per day or per hour basis, but that's only based upon gas and electric that we already knew the bills for. So to use a building, let's just say, to use our main exhibit building,
Mhm.
it's a little bit over $90 a day for just the utilities, but the rate of which you rented went up, I want to say, not even 10%. Because unfortunately, you price yourself out of the market. You've got to make, the community cannot support higher rates for rental, and we had plenty of feedback in that hearing process about this, is that you can't increase your rates in order to cover, let's just say, to make a whole bunch of money so we can put a new building up or anything else like that, because the community won't support it. Community won't rent it. Things will go away. Events like, let's just say Ducks Unlimited or Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation or 4-H events or anything else like that, if you have to charge them a certain amount in order to, especially to look at something like water or something like that, those things are just going to go away. I think you will greatly impact the community's use of the fairgrounds, because you just can't keep raising rates. People will just not pay the rates anymore. These things will go away. Craft fairs, whatever it is, the myriad of different things that use it. I had a lady, not to go too far down the rabbit hole, 2 weeks ago crying in the office because she doesn't know how the event she's going to be able to do the event with the water thing. I was trying to explain to her, breaking down what we're trying to discuss, because why I couldn't get her a contract. And she's going to watch an event that she's been doing for 40 years go away, because if those rates were passed on to her based upon what we know, what we figured, heritage, tradition, all those things will go away. People just won't rent out the property.
So has the fair board sat down and worked on a 5-year forecast plan? Because one of the things that has been discussed is, where does the fair see itself? What are we doing to attract? Because we have a fair ground that has, for example, older buildings that need to be improved, that need to be updated to attract business that's willing to pay more for some of the amenities that you see on a fair. Is there a 5-year plan from the fair as to where they see this going? Because part of what the discussion is the sustainability at this rate, because if the position of the fair board is you cannot raise the rates on the community because they won't rent it. Well, as you continue to dilapidate the fair grounds with the buildings or the leaks in the roof or things like that, you're still not going to be able to attract those people that will pay for that. And so it will eventually go away. So you're slowing the burn of a plan that needs to come forward and say, what is the plan of the fair to improve, to attract? Because you would be throwing arguably good money after bad if you say, county, you just paid that bill since we can't afford to pass it on. Because in part, the reason we can't afford to pass it on to the users of the fair is because we haven't given them something in exchange to say it's worth using it so that we can increase it. So is there a 5-year plan?
No, there is, at this time, we're working on getting one, on going there and making a plan for it, but we don't have one at this time. But I would add too, that the fairgrounds and the buildings and the facilities on the fairgrounds are already behind the 8 ball. They're already past the point where you're going to raise rates and repair things. There's things that need to be done that are gonna take a big financial input if we're gonna fix those things. So to say raising the rates, raise the rates and then fix the, do the maintenance and things that need to be done, we're already past that point. It's past the tipping point already.
I don't disagree. That's why I'm asking for what's the plan of the fair, because if we don't have a plan that says, for example, this is the amount that we're gonna bring in a year in our budget, we need to fix this building because then we can attract more with this building and then we can move to the next building. There has to be a plan. Has there ever been a plan, a future plan on the fair? Of where we should go, even if there isn't one right now for the 5 years? Have we ever seen one?
Yes, I will tell you, there was a plan. The last plan that was in place was when Rhonda Livingston was in there as a fair manager. And there was a 1-year, 3-year, 5-year plan.
Okay. Is that were the 1, 3, and 5-year plans achieved by the fair?
Well, the 1 year was, and then she was removed. And, no, and
And
it,
then after that?
and
no?
it did not, and then also Bob Snyder, who was the maintenance, head of maintenance, he retired. And so those things. I don't want to bring up the past, but
And
other
there's
things took
politics
place.
involved with that.
Yes, there is.
Impact the
And-
fair. So. Do you guys have a draft of a 5-year plan to put forward? Because in part, one of these requests is Bonner County pay, but one of the questions is, show me the plan of how you're gonna spend Bonner County money so that it's not, I mean, that's a reasonable, if you're in private industry, that's going to be a question that does get asked is. With recognition that historically, there are things that negatively impact moving forward with a plan. So I'm saying that that's a given. But when we come forward with the holy crap, there's a bill here. And the plan is for Bonner County to continue to pay and not just pay this year's, but to pay all future water bills from the fair. What's the plan related to that? Because just pay isn't enough information.
I think that we're getting a handle on the finances. And we're working really hard to be responsible with the increase in the budget we got this year with that we're being real specific about what those things are being used for. And we're making good moves in that direction. We have a lot to do. Yeah, I will admit that we need to get a better handle on what's going on. That we've been working through some things and over the past couple of years or so, and we need to turn the corner on that and be able to focus our attention on fairground issues instead of ancillary issues. We want to be accountable. We want to be accountable. We want we need the supervision and we welcome it. And we do need to get a plan together. We'll have to look at the plan that was there. I'm not sure if we have a copy of that. I've never seen it. So, and see where we're at as far as that 5-year plan that we had goes.
Wait, before you go though, only because Jody had her hand up first and then we'll go use, I tried.
All I was gonna say is along with that, historically, part of what has always happened when it comes to the fairgrounds and the buildings and the maintenance, we don't get county money. And we haven't had county money. And so historically, all of that money or anything that has been done, unless it was an insurance through risk management, we have gotten those repairs done by community members who donate, or we pay for part and they donate their services. That has happened. I mean, I wish we had like the spades here for them to give us an idea of how many, I can say literally hundreds of thousands of dollars that family has donated to the fairgrounds. Because if it wasn't for them, I mean, I can go through the list of all the buildings and all the structures that they have been involved in. And if we had to put that money out where they didn't come forward and do that along with other fundraising money or other events that paid for those buildings, there's a lot of those buildings that would not be on that fairgrounds today.
I think that that's absolutely true, and I think from that visibility that there's recognition that people are doing that for the fair and they're giving their time, which has a dollar value. They're giving their skill, which is a dollar value. From a member of the public, there's also what do we spend the money for? And I think the transparency aspect of how do we produce a budget without a plan of how we're going to spend the money becomes the question of the public. And then how do we ask the county to supplement a budget when I don't have a plan of how we're going to spend that money? And that is where, when the question comes of why we're paying this bill, the question for the county is, if and when we pay a bill, it means I'm not doing something else. And so the plan that we have moving forward from the county, in part, is we need to audit what we are spending as the county, where is our money going? And I have to be able to say, for example, Bonner County needs to pay this bill for the fair. And I'm telling you, the investment in the fair, for example, is that the fair is going to use this 1-year plan and move in this direction and report out to the county and eventually take over this bill after we get to this point on a 5 or 10-year plan. But that's not what we have been doing, not as a fair board, but as a county. We have not done that type of reporting and transparency to the community of how we're moving the money around, because in part, the county should have known it was paying this bill. And then the county would have had to make a conscious decision of, we are paying this bill and what do we get in exchange for that bill in terms. So it's not all fair. It's just, there's more of you than there are of us right now. But it's what do we do moving forward? And so going back to the 1, 3, and 5-year plan, if the 1-year plan was exhausted, it sounds like it might have been years ago. Have you guys identified whether or not a 3-year plan that was not completed remains appropriate and necessary to utilize that as a goal moving forward? And how did we come up with the next budget without a plan? Because it isn't, because in this part, the fair board decided, and I'm not gonna go backwards, you guys didn't want a commissioner liaison. Had valid reasons. We're not gonna go back to that for that position. So in terms of saying you need the oversight, that's not what we're here about. I'm here about this bill is coming out of the county funds. But I'm gonna ask, are you guys going to be agreeable to a commissioner oversight if that's what you want? Because that's your decision as the board. And I'm not even going to ask you guys to make that decision here. That's your executive decision discussion. So that's something that needs to be considered. For me as a commissioner and looking at internal auditing, I have to justify every dollar going out with a point of recognition that the community values the fair, that the cost benefit to the community is running out. Whether or not we pay this bill, the cost benefit of the community for the fair is running out because we're not upgrading the fair to attract people to invest money into paying for an additional rate when we're not moving in that direction. And in part, we're not checking off boxes on a plan of 1, 3, 5 to justify. We are taking in funds, but we have people that are also volunteering. Eventually that also runs out. And we can hope it doesn't run out in the next 5 years, but that is what happens. We can't plan for volunteers. So we have to have a plan of how to be fiscally responsible with what our income is. So 3-year, 1-year, 5-year plan that have already been drafted, but not the 3rd and 5th year being completed. Do we have an option to look at that? Do you know where that is? Yeah,
I've never seen one myself.
does anybody know where it is? We're all at the,
All I can do is tell you that I can look through my boxes of all my fair board stuff and. But it is not gonna happen between now and January.
No
I will
worries.
flat tell you that.
that's a tall order. Since that didn't happen, has it just been, and be honest with what is the pushback? Is it a pushback from the county that has made it so that it's a lot of work to make those plans? And if people aren't going to receive and implement those plans, then people feel like, well, what's the point of putting all the work in for a future forecasting plan if we're not going to be received well? Is there something within the county that makes this process not move forward? That needs to be changed so that when we're doing this work, or is it just we need to sit down and that needs to be the plan to make the plan? You've got the microphone next to you.
So I was gonna say earlier, you asked about a 5-year plan and I kind of chuckled. I was like, I thought we got kudos for getting through this fair. Let alone 5-year plan. Now, we have had, all joking aside, we have had our fair share of setbacks. We are beyond that now. And we are in a better place. We got a full 7-member board. We have a very good bookkeeper, treasurer, sorry, the right word. We have a great staff, full staff. Mark's been doing an amazing job as fair manager. We are in a better place now than we have ever been. So to say that, asking us right now, do we have a 5-year plan? No, but it's six months from now, is that, that's most certainly feasible.
I'm gonna change to be realistic. If you've never done a 5-year plan, months from now is your year plan. 5-year plan is a lot of work. By definition, a 5-year plan. If my request is actually gonna be that you guys get out a 1-year plan of the fair moving forward. You guys did a budget for your next cycle. It should include and be much faster to complete, so that we can see the direction and identify completion. Because you've done the budget, you've already identified where money is going to go. But it's reasonable and feasible to say 1-year plan. Once you see, and then once you're done with 1 year, then you work on your next year's. And in part, you have to recognize, even though I commend you for saying you could do it in 6 months, I would also like to be realistic on, it's not reasonable to do it in 6 months. You guys you're not employees, you guys are volunteers. This is an after work type of a function. And it's reasonable to say 1-year plan, because you're also going to come up on your audit. You're going to come up on having done your budget, and you'll have cleaned up a lot of what needs to move forward to where we need a direction. And in part, it's going to need to include what is the goal of the fair for the future of the fair, with how do you see, what are your hot button issues? If dilapidated buildings are a hot button issue, and we have not fully, are we just repairing with Band-Aids, or are we really revamping these to where they're completed? And I've been on the fairgrounds. I don't see new buildings. And so I'm sure there's a building that's gotta be a big goal to get one of those buildings in. And it needs to be a plan that says, if we did this, then this is where we could actually be moving forward and banking money to do the next repair, and then the next repair. And then you can attract more, but you can't figure all of that out in 6 months. I think that's way too short of a period of time. Unless, okay, well, you were moving your hand, so I want to make sure I look that way. Okay,
That sounds reasonable to me. I mean, we can work for a 1-year plan in 6 months.
I think that your 1-year plan, if you can identify the 1, 3, and 5 that were already written, it's probably already written for you. You just need to find that document. Arguably, the 1 is probably gone by now, but your 3 will probably contain a lot of information on the fair. And for me, when I look at the fair, it has to include not needing someone else to pay your bill. And that doesn't mean someone doesn't pay it, a request to pay a bill intermittently. It means you have to look at a cost benefit of both options. Not that the answer is we pay or the answer is we don't pay, but it needs to have that evaluation. And then why should the county pay? And simply saying, well, the county has always paid. The idea of you've always done it that doesn't make it the right thing to do. And is that the right thing for the budget? And it may very well be, but if we pay the bill for the fair, the community needs to fully understand the reason that the board would make such a decision. In this case, there's been a decision through approval of a payment, but not a conscious decision that you guys can rely on, which is really what you need. You need reliance that this dollar amount is going to be paid for, or you need to budget for it. That's the reality of the bill itself. I completely understand you saying that you guys didn't budget for it because you've never seen the bill before, but I think we have to make a very clear, why would the county budget pick that up? And in part, there's the argument that it is a service to Bonner County residents, and that's what we're attracting and all of that good stuff. It just needs to be clear why, because we've gone all the way back to, I think, 1900s, and nobody knows why we were paying this bill. So that's a long ways to go back. I wish I could do that, send some bills somewhere and someone just pays nonstop, but. So my open question will be for you guys to discuss in your own meeting. Can you get a 1-year plan out to Bonner County? And then give us an earmark of when we'd get the next year's out, because we have to start planning for the future, because the goal is Bonner County wants a fair, but we have to plan to keep a fair. And we're living year to year on a lot of things in Bonner County, but the fair has to be one, because there is a distinction between your group and Bonner County. And we need to respect the line that's there and make a commitment to do that as a board of commissioners and not overstep. Because if I overstep as a commissioner, then it negatively impedes the progress for you guys making those goals and achieving those goals. And so, but we need to kind of reset and say, I'll say for myself, as my job is to be a support of what the fair is in the right direction and not be an impediment to that progress. So will 1 year goal, what's reasonable for you guys to give a review? And I'm thinking the rest of this year is kind of gone because it's 2 holidays back to back. But maybe can we have a discussion with the fair after January to see, once you guys reconvene after the holiday time, to give a realistic outlook of when you can report out to us a year plan for the fair and the direction you guys want to go as a fair board.
Sure.
And then also include whether or not you want to identify whether or not you'll accept a liaison, because the current statute, there's no requirement that happen. We can do this where I say workshop with the fair and then you guys come. We can't do that. I'm forcing myself into your section. It's whether or not you guys want that.
I think what we want is open communications. And not necessarily somebody that has to be there and hover over us or anything, but we do need open communication. We do need to be able to come to you, and you need to be able to come to us. And we talk about these things. We need to be able to give us an idea, and need to be able to answer you why that's a good idea or why we don't think it's a good idea, because you may not know all the nuances of what the business that's going on that it pertains to. But we just want open, honest communication. And I think we have that now. And I'm thrilled.
Would it be better for you guys to be on a schedule, like a quarterly communication with the board openly in this type of setting, so that there can be some transparency and some dialogue, so that you guys can also say what you need, instead of it just being, we're coming to you with a problem. This is a schedule of communication to kind of
Sure.
get out of that mode.
We can certainly talk about that.
Okay. Can you guys think about that in your next meeting, of whether or not to do like a quarterly report out and discussion? One of the things that I would like the fair board to consider is, what is your structure? And this has to be part of your 1 year. Are you coming into the county system or are you not? Because we need to have clear lines. We can't do a la carte. Clerk's office is going to do this aspect and not this aspect. We use Munis, where it creates an additional layer. It's not about preference. It's about streamlining our process, as we're looking for what's the right way to move forward as a county? If we have to understand what your goal is, and it has to include, are you guys willing to come into Munis or are you not? Are you going to use HR as our payroll, or are you guys gonna use a different service? So that should be something that you guys discuss as well, because when you're a different taxing district and create a different layer, it creates an additional level of work for the clerk's office. And it's not very clear. So if we could redefine that line and work with our comptroller on what you guys are looking for, so that we can have a meeting of the minds of what our obligation is to the fair. And if there's something that we're doing that isn't helping you guys move forward, or if there's something that you need us to do that we could be doing, but we're not. Did I say all that kind of right?
I think where I'm at is that we want to do things according to state statute. Whether that is something I personally want, my opinion or not, we want to do things according to the law. And whether that's advantageous in my eyes or not, I think we need to set that base so that future fair boards and county relationships within the county and everything are on a solid base. We know where we're at. We are following the law. And whether that means, whatever that means, as far as payroll and all those kind of things, I would prefer that the county continues to and HR and the county continues to handle payroll and everything. At the first of the year, just start using our EIN number, which the auditor suggested, strongly advised that we have our own EIN. Start using that as payroll in their payroll thing at the first of the year. But what the state statutes say, that's where I'm at.
Okay.
And I really don't know. We've worked with legal in the past on trying to get that figured out. And as far as I know, they're still trying to figure it out. Exactly what our place is when it comes to state statute. And I know that we serve at the pleasure of the commissioners. And I know that the fairgrounds is Bonner County property. And those things I know, according to state statute. But there's a lot that I don't know, that we don't know exactly the intricacies of how this is supposed to work according to state law. But we need to function that way because we have to have that basis to launch from.
And I think maybe consider that maybe your first year plan is to fully have the board fully understanding the limitations of the laws that govern a fair board and what those lines are, because one thing that a quarterly report out can do is keep the conversation going, because if you have been working with legal and you don't have an answer, the communication ball has dropped, because we're still spending money and taking in money without a true understanding if legal hasn't given that definition. And so I would ask that you make that list of things that we need to continue, that the county needs to provide that response to. And is it the right thing that Bonner County Fair Board, Fairground is using the prosecutor's office? Because I know that has come up as a question. But that comes to if we're not having the conversation, we don't know what's missing and what needs to be worked on, which means we're not moving forward with the overall plan of having a fair that continues successfully in the future. And so if you have a list of things that you guys don't have that we can help with as the board, you guys have to communicate that to us by saying, like I communicated this, I said, oh, who made this payment? I would like to have a meeting. You guys have to tell me, I need to know what the boundaries are. I need to know what we can ask the clerk's office for. Those things need to be continually on that agenda so we can say we've resolved the issue instead of we're continuing to talk about the issue.
There are a couple of things that I wanted to look at. One is we have the playground on the fairgrounds in the boundary of the fairgrounds. The electric for the playground comes from the sheriff's office. The water comes from the street.
What electricity is at the playground? Just curious, because I don't know that I've seen the outlet.
I believe there's some lights there, but also to run the irrigation system, obviously you're gonna have to have electricity. It's been having some issues and the electricity goes over to the sheriff's office building and is wired into the sheriff's office building and they is.
But you guys aren't paying that bill. Is the
It's
sheriff
the-
here?
well,
I don't know who,
Look,
I don't
don't
know.
bring
who-
up the
point.
sheriff's bill. We're talking about county.
I'm
bill.
just saying
It's
that
not
that's where the
right now.
utility,
My
that's where the
point,
utility.
yeah, my point is that somebody put the playground on the fairgrounds and now all of a sudden we have to take care of it. Nobody's made arrangements to repay us for doing that. Nobody has, we spend more on that playground than just the water bill.
So let me ask you that, because I know that I got to speak with the manager over. A prior board member required you guys to put up sunshades for
They
kids
come up and down every year and it costs $385
each for,
twice a year to put up and take down sunshades. That's something we've been doing, but you know,
We've been
when the
required to
play, yeah, required to do. When the playground was put
can
there,
I ask on that one, how did you get? I went back to see if there was a board vote. How did you get the requirement of doing that? So I see everybody shaking their head. You just got told to do it?
It's kind of like with the water dump station. Again,
exactly.
it got put there. And who then had to take it over and be responsible? And now it's coming up, so who's gonna be responsible for paying that?
Yeah.
But where is that original document that shows that the fair board ever voted for that to go on to fairgrounds property? The same with that playground. Where was that vote that shows that that was approved? And that then they would take that on?
That's the second thing I was gonna say is the dump station. Is that, okay, so we are gonna be required to pay the water bill on it now. We didn't put the dump station there. Somebody decided that it should go there. And who that was, well, of course, we don't know. But now we are required to pay the water bill and the sewer bill, which you've been paying, thank you.
I'm
But
gonna say.
but now you
Aren't
want
we
to
here about
require
this water
us to
and
pay
sewer?
it when we didn't put that dump station there. And, but the big thing for me on the dump station is when that dump station takes a dump, who's gonna fix it? We're talking a big bill.
The or the electrical line going to the playground is a good example right now.
Right.
Estimated to be a $3,000 fix
And they want us to fix
because
it.
it's stripping the breaker over the shop or wherever it is at the sheriff's office. And so they just shut it off, shut the breaker off. Now, in order to fix it, I mean, the electrician estimated $3,000. Who pays that bill?
We didn't put the playground there.
I didn't put the playground there. We are here because I said who's paying those bills.
That's exactly
So,
right.
but in part, it sounds like one of the things that we have to do is how. Obviously, we're all just kind of skirting over. Some board member said put a playground there and y'all have a playground. That's pretty much what we're saying.
And the same
And
thing
then
with the dump station.
And the dump station, and then now I'm saying, take your bills fairground, because these are fairground bills. With the exception of RV and playground, the other one is a fairground bill, clearly. But the RV dump station and playground, the question, and the sunshades. I'm sorry, I just figured
Well,
everybody
I
knew
think they
when
have
it's
to take them
sunny.
down every year because of snow. I'm
It
sure
is,
that-
but
no.
I've been told how we got them. It just doesn't make sense that people didn't know it was sunny out, therefore you erected that, without a vote, because there was a cost associated with it that is impacting a budget. And so there is an argument for how did a single commissioner tell you guys you had to erect something that costs about $800 or $700 something a year to your budget when arguably you didn't budget for that and it wasn't a vote to, and I don't know that we can vote for
I
you
don't
guys. to
even
have
know
to
if
put it.
we erected them.
We didn't.
We
You
didn't
guys-
erect it, it just appeared.
No, you did.
We did.
You guys
Okay.
did. I'm aware. I'm just trying to be nice and move forward. Yes,
What's that?
Sunshades are ours.
Okay.
we
Well,
just
the
are,
sunshades are ours, but the putting up of the playground,
No.
we did not pay for.
no, I know
that just
that, but the
appeared.
sunshades appeared.
Because
Be-
kids were getting hot. Sliding down the slide, I suppose.
we don't want to address why a commissioner told you guys you had to do that. It's just that what was the process that allowed someone to say you must use your budget money to do it? That's how I'm trying to word it, to not get into the who, but just the why. And maybe there needs to be a process or an operating procedure of when you guys receive something like that. Because in real time, in this example, somebody received a phone call about it's hot outside and this gets erected and it comes out of your budget. But when did someone come to the board to say, did you know that this commissioner told me to do that? Because I found out about it when I'm going through the bills. I didn't find out about it in real time,
That's to my point of doing things according to the law.
which is part of it has to be that there's communication on your end to say, if I came to your meeting behind your Monday night meeting and said, I want you to do this, and you guys did not want to do this, how did the other two commissioners know that that took place? I'm sure nobody knows how it happened because I wasn't the one who did it.
Well,
But
it was our ignorance,
but
obviously, that let some of this happen.
No, I'm not
No.
even gonna give you the, I can tell
it
you where
was
she's
re-
going. It's
it was
the board
reactive.
pushed itself into fair and they responded and they
Yes.
didn't have consideration for, it should have been a fair board decision of whether to even do anything for a complaint that it's hot on the slide outside in the summer.
It was commissioner,
Commissioner. just
manager, the end. And we can't replay that.
And
We were
so-
not going to.
And so a plan has to include, what does the fair respond when a commissioner says, hey, I got this complaint, what would you do? And before we spend our
Yes,
money,
exactly.
you could have come to the board and said, this commissioner told me to do this. I want a board vote on this. Because I promise you, I would have been vocal on, yes, it is hot outside.
We could have, yes,
Hindsight.
and it was our ignorance at the time that we didn't do.
No, it's.
No,
I-
You're
is.
trying to be nice. It's there's a frustration within the fair over how
But-
commissioner had treated the fair.
But
That
also,
was what
the
happened.
fair board didn't know.
Oh, yeah.
Go back to the minutes. The fair board didn't know. So there's no reason to even go down that road. So we're at a point where instead of the fair board constantly being reactive to these things, we need to be proactive and work with the county commissioners, work with the comptroller, work with everybody in us being proactive going forward and have this positive relationship. Because going backwards about why this happened is not going to get us going forward. It is only going to dig up things that none of us want to go back down that rabbit hole. We're past it. We're done being reactive on the past. We want to be proactive and work positively with everybody going forward in what's best, how to move forward for everybody's purposes that works for the county, works for the community, and works for the fair board. That's where we want to go.
I do understand that there's a reason to give some examples because you have to create a standard operating procedure. And we do have to look at decisions that were made that we need to learn from, because if we already went through it, we don't need to revisit it again. And that's part of creating a year, 3-year, 5-year plan is we don't want to end up in the years past, but we can't not do that if we don't recognize what happened and move forward with a common goal of we're not going to, which is why I'm saying we don't need to talk about a person, we need to talk about the issue so we don't have that issue happen again, which requires us to put in a procedure for when a commissioner comes and says, hey, I got this. What is your response? Your response is has to be something that your whole team knows of.
Mhm.
We got this request, we had a meeting, and this is our decision. We need to bring it back to the full board because we can't be, there is no single commissioner that can do anything in this county. It is a board decision. And so what are we doing to ensure that we respect your role, but also equally respecting the board as in all 3 commissioners?
But that includes at this point in time, the same with one commissioner going to our manager. Our manager is not going to make that decision. He is going to come to our board, agendize it, and then either him or one of us would come back to your whole board. I mean, that I think that's kind of where I'm at in saying that we are no longer being reactive, that is our proactive. Because we have those things written in place. He can't just go spend that money because a county commissioner told him to. And we know legally he can't do that. So he has to go to the board, and then we have to go back to you guys and say, this person asked us to do this, but we want to know why, and here is our reasoning for us doing it or not doing it.
And if you guys have changed that policy, there has to be a communication closure where you say, this happened, we have changed this process, just so you know, this is our process. That way, there's some transparency of your standard operating procedure as a whole, not on individual issues, but this is how we operate. For example, if I wanted to say, let's go put up an umbrella over the sun for the fair, I should know what is my procedure to get you guys to review my request, which isn't going to be going to Matt. Maybe there's a form that I need to fill out to say, hey, I would like the fair board to consider this at your next meeting. I need to know what I need to do for a request, because there's also, you don't want the Board of Commissioners to overstep the fair board relationship with the staff either. But if you guys don't communicate that our direction, we're running it trial and error based on what I come to you, what I don't come to you on, if you don't communicate that. And that's part of a plan of communication that the fair has to identify, so that we can gain our political capital of we're moving in the right direction as a fair board and as a board of commissioners, as we have different roles, but have a little bit of overlap between the two, because you guys are different and there's a lot of statutes related to that.
Yes. But I do want to bring it back to my original thought is that the playground does not belong to the fairgrounds. The dump station does not belong to the fairgrounds. It happens to be within our borders, but I don't think that we should be paying the bill on those things. And I'd like for us to talk about that in workshop.
Okay.
And work this out, because it's everything. Yeah, it's just, well, you understand.
No, I
Yep.
understand. If there's no commission from the fair board for an RV dump station, let me ask this question: where do the people that stay overnight dump? Is it at this dump station?
Are they hooked up at the sites?
There's some sites that have hookups.
And the
There's
sites,
some sites that do not, but I will tell you that by my observation personally, just over this summer, the campers that are there are not the majority of the campers in the summertime that are dumping there. Majority of the campers that I see are not leaving our campground and dumping before they come in that campground. It's everybody in the community that knows that that's a free dump site, because there's no other one, I don't believe, in town or in the region that's free, unless you're staying at a campsite and it has free water. So I will tell you, the majority of the people that use that are not 28 people randomly that are in our campground.
and so one of the things that we had a discussion on is a pay station, because it wasn't just sewage dumped at that location. We have people that live off grid who come in and fill up the IBC CPT tote of over 300 gallons. And essentially we're redistributing that cost throughout the community for everybody to pay. Then we also have contractors and whatnot. And then we have people that move in and create their own paradise and then advertise, go dump your stuff at the fairground location. And so that begs the question of, and then the other problem is this is very old and it's ready to break. And so who's responsible as we look at,
And we've also checked at we did some checking on prices to have that metered or monitored, $40,000 to $80,000. Well, it's not our dump station to have to put in some kind of pay station there. We don't have the funds to do that. We would rather take that money and put a roof on one of our buildings if we had it. So I think that's the thing we need to talk about is who's going to be responsible for those and why it's got to be the fairgrounds, just because somebody put it inside our boundaries.
to be fair though, that when we're in summertime and people are coming and they're having to park their trailers, they benefit from it existing. The question then is, how do you limit the use to those people who are getting services from the fairground versus those that are using it as a free dump station?
Well,
Because I
imagine
think it's
there's- I
valuable
imagine
to,
there's ways to do that, obviously, but,
I think the cost would outweigh
yeah.
what. Get yourself back into a position to either pay for the cost to put in the infrastructure, more or less pay for whatever it is that you're using.
then just do like double dutch and jump in, you have the microphone.
Just
Sorry,
question.
you might not know double dutch, he looked at me like.
Is the county, are you saying that the county is unwilling or it's not in the best interest of the county to have a free dump station within the county paid for by the county?
I'm not saying anything, we're just talking about a dump station that nobody is staking a claim to, but it's about to break.
So the about the break thing, I don't know what it takes. It seems like it's kind of a gravity flow situation. I don't know what all, there is some infrastructure there, roads and all that kind of stuff. I don't know what it takes to maintain that. But the amount of usage that thing gets seems like it's a very good thing for the community. I don't know that it's something that it's most certainly a benefit. The filling of the water just going by just last year's fees here, they're $3,035 in a year for off-grid people to be filling water. That's a pretty small amount in the scope of the entire bill. It seems like the dump station, the playground, both of which, obviously, we, as the fair board, I wasn't on the fair board then when those were put in, but the fair board didn't ask for, but they're for the community. Yes, do they benefit the fairgrounds? Be hard to say no to, but do they benefit the community as a whole? Outside of the fairgrounds, absolutely. So we probably shouldn't think about making them go away, but how do we pay for them? And are you willing as the commissioners, is the county willing to pay for those? At a relatively small cost right now.
Oh, here's an issue that I have is, do we know who's using it? Are they 7B plates that are using that dump station, or are they Washington plates? And are they Oregon plates? And are they everybody that's traveling from
Canada.
Boise up to Canada,
There's a lot of
stopping
people.
and using that? And when you say it's for the better of the community, I don't know if I can buy that or not without having facts.
No.
I think the other
I mean-
part for me is the argument on better for the community. You're talking about an RV dump station in town versus the rural areas of the off-grid. People that are in Southwest Bonner County, I was one of these people. You go down to Spirit Lake, there's a place where you dump it. It's not, there is a value in saying people having a dump station aren't dumping it onto the ground. You're always going to be able to make that argument. The question is, it costs money to have it. And how do you say who pays for it? Because should the entire county pay for a dump station? Or do we have to say if you're using that dump station, because that dump station is old, it is going to need repair. There is a lot of infrastructure underground for that. And when it breaks, that's where you're going to have your health and safety issue because we have a sewage issue. And so that's part of a plan of if it's the county's obligation because we put it there, then we need to have a plan for what do you do if and when it breaks? How do you make sure it's upgraded and updated to the correct standard? Because nobody is staking claim for the RV dump station, we're just dumping stuff in it, waiting for someone to say an alarm went off that we can't ignore anymore. But we know that it's old. We know that a lot of the usage on this station, I have had a lot of people calling, and that's part of what made me look at this is I see contractors, I see British Columbia plates coming down here using that to dump stuff in because we've given it to people for free at the cost of all of the community. And so when people are asking the county, where are we spending their tax money? We are spending it here, and people are asking a similar thing that Commissioner Corn has. Well, who's even using it? Well, we don't know. It's whoever wants to because it's free. And when you look at our solid waste, we don't want people to use solid waste that are out of our county garbage. We specifically say that. So if we were going to offer the water sewer at that station, why wouldn't we have the same standard that said this is a Bonner County thing, not an anybody thing? And part of the problem then is, well, who monitors that? How do you put that in to make sure that happens? Well, if we can't make that happen, then we have to go to the community, in my opinion, and say, do you guys want to do this free to whoever wants to go to this station, because the cost of managing it isn't worth it, but the cost to repair that particular dump station is over, if I remember, the last estimate was over 100,000 if we needed to fix the dump station. And I think that's why you guys aren't putting up a large sign in the front, because it's too close to where we might have to tear stuff up if we have to fix that particular spot. That's part of future planning of the county and of the fair. Is that it, would this be better suited not up at the front or farther in the back somewhere? Or do we knock down that playground and say, we can't afford to water this, let's slide it over and have an access that we're controlling, versus just free access? That's a hard one, but I definitely hear Bear saying, we didn't put it up there, yes, people benefit from it, but why do we have to pay for something we didn't budget for and design? And then now it's coming up for repair, which is significant, and I think that's a valid question, and I think it's a valid question for the playground that's in place. The fair does benefit from its existence, but who commissioned that playground to take responsibility for the irrigation? And it looks like in this one that the sheriff's station is paying the water bill here, and they haven't complained yet, but
I think the general.
No, there's
the playground had to do
there's a
more with
meter on the playground.
the,
Electricity is coming.
The electricity alone is coming from the sheriff's.
and I'm pointing to Matt, because I think the bigger issue on the playground was who's mowing this lawn and keeping this grounds up, and should it go back to Parks and Waterways? Is that part?
That's part of
Where
it,
we're going.
is we think it's a part.
So Ben, can I
Parks.
have you slide it 2 rows back, since Matt wanted to sit there and playgrounds here? And what is there a hardship of Parks and Waterways taking back the playground responsibility?
As long as it's budgeted appropriately, no. I mean, I feel like it's in the scope of what we manage.
Okay,
I don't think this heartache is just a matter of making sure that we have the time and the money to do it.
okay. And so that would be planning for next fiscal year, because we didn't budget for that this year.
Correct.
Thank you. Anything else you wanted to get off before we open it up to public?
We need to address the extension.
Well, Extension needs to pay their own water bill too, here in the background. We have a water bill.
So I won't speak on behalf of the extension, but I will just say that if you look at the handout that I gave you that says on the Vista Utilities, it says Fairgrounds Office. That's actually not Fairgrounds Office. That's the extension office that sits on within our Southbury line as well.
And so is there a way to just charge them a flat rate fee instead of updating, so that we don't incur a cost for them to pay their share of the electricity and water?
Well, the gas bill is, they're on their own meter here, so that's got nothing to do with,
Electricity and water.
but the electricity and water, I don't know. I'm not a utility guy, so I don't know how to figure that out,
Okay,
but if there is some way to do it aside from paying the money that it would cost to put in separate metering there or sub metering at their building, which I think would be way expensive from what I understand.
so my suggestion would be, so for the new building across, we gave a percentage that EMS should have to pay for their draw on electricity there. And maybe we look at the square footage of the building and we look at what a reasonable rate would be. And then we did it by resolution by saying, based on this, this is the percentage of the overall bill. And then maybe you just pull out their office bills and do an average, and then do a resolution that says that their budget will pay that compensates your budget for the bill. Does that sound like something you guys could add into your next meeting?
I just don't know whether or not they have the funding to do it, so I don't want to speak on their behalf.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like a great idea, but I don't want to say, yeah, sure.
Sure.
Yeah, so we had historically paid a flat rate, for utilities, $150 a month. And when we were going through our budgets for this year, we did ask the commissioners to keep that in our maintenance budget. Because I wondered if that might be something that the Fair Board would want to continue charging. So we have accounted for that in this year's 2025's fiscal year budget. So that is there, but certainly going forward, if there is, however it wants to be managed, if it's gonna be more than that, we haven't budgeted for that this year, but we could budget for that accordingly for the next year.
So based on what she said, ask her for $150 a month moving forward and analyze her bills for next fiscal year and then address it. And then we would like our $150 for equal.
For brokering the deal.
I tried, it didn't work.
The money that you have, like this form that I think I probably gave you, the $1,700 for this about 11 months. For just gas, can you pay that and pay that 150 out of your budget?
No, we
That's
just
what I want.
accounted the 150, so for the year, I believe that's 1,800.
So
So,
that would cover your gas bill,
exactly.
but not
But
anything.
not anything.
So, but can you take your budget and look at it to see if there was excess to help pay the water bill? Cause it can't just be the county paying, or do you already know that answer?
I do not.
Okay, so can we just get a verified answer from comptroller looking at your budget, if you could afford to pay your own electricity? Because basically you guys are saying no to them, they're paying a bill and they're saying no to us, and so we're just moving the money
The
here.
bill, right now, we just do electric and water that comes out of ours. The gas you've been paying.
Yeah.
But you've been paying that the whole time, but it said fairgrounds office, so I just want to make sure
Yes.
that's,
And I know, but
and I just don't want to hurt. Like,
you have your own budget issue right now,
Mhm.
but you're saying electric and gas is what you're paying for them. But you're asking us to pay electric, water and sewer, on the fair. So what I'm saying is, let her go to the comptroller to review their whole budget to see if they could pay any percentage for what your average is. You guys look at the average of what that office is, what you're paying out of your budget for their electric and water, because the gas is not their issue. Because they're going direct to, it said it on one of these forms. Yeah, and so Northern Lights, I think it was. And so then if you identify what is the average that building is drawing out of your budget, then they can next year budget for that. We can look to see if they had opportunity in their budget this year. But that's part of the strain on your budget that then puts strain on the county budget. And then if nothing else, we at least have the objective data of where her budget line is for electricity. And then we'll do the same for the fairgrounds. Does that make sense? Anything else from the fair board? Matt?
Quick question. It seems like, this dump station isn't going away anytime soon. So then when it breaks, it becomes a matter of who's paying for this thing, right? So what I've seen in other regions and places is there are credit card sliders to use, these different dump stations, which kind of makes sense, right? We have people coming from Canada, Washington, who knows where, Pluto. So why not just pass that directly on to the people who are using it instead of making it a Bonner County resident issue? That's what I'm.
It's an excellent
It's
idea.
$40,000 to $80,000 to put it
Yeah,
in. That's the
40 to
problem.
80,000.
It's how much?
$40,000 to
$80,000 to put that system in. So we looked at it. So there has to be there's an upfront cost associated with, and then the pay by use pays it back, but you still have to front load it.
And that's the question is, are we looking at this as a long-term investment? I'm just asking.
Well, for me, when you hear the issue, it's not just whether or not you can make people pay, is do you put in 40 to 80 to make people pay for a system that might break after you put in your credit card sliders? Because then it was pointless and we lost $40,000 to $80,000. So we have to have a plan that says ensure that we have updated the system so that the investment in the pay station is worth it. That's part of where we are.
And that was the one thing I wasn't really hearing in this workshop was maybe you guys have already talked about it. But it didn't seem like that was a discussion item. was making the users pay for it themselves, which kind of made sense.
He mentioned it a little bit earlier. It's just that it was the 40 to 80,000 for the pay per use option to actually have it installed because there's no budget to actually have a manned dump station there.
Right.
And
yeah.
so the self-serve option, that's that 40 to 80. And so that, since there's only a few of you in the back, so you don't have to get up, we're just gonna let him slide that microphone back between you guys so that you don't have to walk all the way up to the front. Anything else?
Yeah, and then the other question is, there's a lot of other places that it sounds like we have contractors, campers, all sorts of folks living off grid who are using this water fill station. There's a lot of other places that charge by the gallon. So what if that's something we want to keep doing as a county? Is that something worth looking into?
That's part of the 40 to 80,000.
Okay, so you guys have already had the solutions. I just didn't quite.
It's just, we don't have the money. That's what it comes down to, is the money to put in the pay station, because there are people that have been off grid who rely on this that are happy to pay for the water that they're using. It's just we don't charge them. And it's because we don't have the way to collect the funds to charge them for the water aspect of it.
So one more question is this something that we could reach out to DEQ for?
It's not a water quality issue.
It could be if it was starting to spill.
It's not, trust me. We're waiting for it to just bubble up from the earth, but you
Black
can't get a
hole.
drink, yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Can we fence it? And then they have to go check in and pay and.
Oh, gosh.
Then
Now you,
why you have hours, why you have people there already?
yeah, but that still costs. That still is labor. That's still having our people having to do things that is not their job at this time. And we just finally got a full staff, and believe me, they're busy.
And I think that's part of when you do your plan, you show why that's not a viable option in numbers. So that we can say the direction we're going makes sense in numbers. It's not fiscally sound to say we're going to have another FTE for this time. But what is it sound to say we're gonna do that in the summer months? Could you use the panopticism of saying no contractors filling? That way, when people send me their text message of the photograph of the contractor, that the county could say, look, you filled up at that dump station, someone sent that photograph, because people could police it themselves. Is there an opportunity to mitigate some stuff by letting people know, stop doing it, it's costing the county something that we can't afford to pay for you guys to send people over to us for that reason? You'd be surprised. I mean, that's how the idea of panopticism works a lot. You see it in law enforcement all the time. Plainclothes police officers are on the bus. Where does that happen when you're seeing stuff happen all the time? Not necessarily. But the idea that they ask you not to can prevent some people from doing it, especially since there's a gentleman who walks his dog by that dump station all the time and tells me contractor is filling it up, or these people are dumping it, or there's a sign there telling you to do it here, which that storage place did, I believe. They had a sign to use our dump station for a period of time.
Their advertisement, they
And
put out an advertisement.
They didn't put in their own dump station, and they didn't need to, because we made it easy to use the county to do that, and
Well,
we've been paying. So
Yes.
let's allow, did you want to say something more before I go to the back? Okay, who has the microphone? All right, Miss Amy.
Amy Lunsford for the record. Okay, so I'm a little confused after this discussion because I thought the fair was its own taxing district and they got X amount of dollars out of each property tax or something allotted to them each year. Is that not true?
No, we're not a taxing district. We're not like.
Can we grab the microphone? Can you? Yep. Never mind. Treasurer is just scaring at me like. It was like eye contact, like, sorry.
So the fair is a fund within the county. So they can't, their taxing authority is from us. But they have a designated fund. So a portion, yeah. It is on.
Okay, so. I'll just give you mine.
Yeah, so the fair is a fund within the county's tax, like we get to levy for them to a certain point, right? So they still have to fit within our maximum levies, it's a piece of the puzzle, right? But it's through our authority as the county that they get their levied amount. And then also, so they don't have like, I don't want to say full control, especially given the way that it's broken up right now with the county handling all of their payroll for staff. So each year they provide their budget. We know what their salary numbers are supposed to be, so we put that together and that's what they levy for. In prior years, in recent history, we've had some gaps in coverage with the fair manager, so we levied for more funds than they actually used. And so those monies live in their fund balance. The county can't spend the money that was collected for fair, right? For anything else, it has to be spent at the fair. So this year, when they came to the board and wanted some increases, one-time increases, enhancements in their budget this year, the board was able to allow that because they had that cash money in their fund balance. Does that make sense?
I think that's what we have to fix in the county is we mingle words that aren't correct, and then it creates a constant misunderstanding of what something is. And I think we're seeing that with using fund versus taxing district, and we just kind of just call it all Bonner County because someone started it's all Bonner County money, but that's not how we have to think about it, because fair money is fair money because we collected it for the fair.
Correct.
And that it's a fund, it's not its own entity. It has a relationship to Bonner County as a whole. But like if Bonner County does not hold Bonner County Fair, and I believe it's for 2 years straight, someone can come and challenge that and take that over, which is why we need a plan that says how we're going to continue at this rate, because we don't want to fail as a fair. And that's in statute for it.
Okay, so you guys, so then I'm hearing that the commissioners make a budget for the fair each year. So how do they get their money? And why don't they get enough money to pay their bills and keep a functioning place? Because, if they're using sponsors, it's like during the fair last year, they had $100,000 they allotted as a budget for their rodeo and their bashing of the bulls and their concert. So as a free range taxpayer, I'm looking at this number and saying, well, they have leaky roofs, their parking lot is a lake. So why are they spending all this money on these events if the county's giving them, if the county's not giving them money? But if you guys are allotting them money and then they're using that with sponsorship money, it makes a little bit more sense. But what is the number you guys allot to them each year to maintain their employees in the facility?
So I can't give you a definitive number, but I can tell you that in prior years, it's been their salary allocations plus their benefits, and then add in an additional $20,000 that the county gave to the fair board to help purchase fair books and ribbons.
And there's been a reduction because we used to have a director and there's no longer a director position, which was a higher salary rate. And now it's just a fair manager. So there was an ease a little bit in their budget from the different costs there. But I think what you're wanting to see is you want to see their intake and outgoing to see where is the plan of what is remaining after you say the operating costs have been exhausted. I think that's what you're asking for.
Exactly. So can the fair tell us, does that RV park make you guys money? And if it doesn't, why do you guys continue beating this dead horse? Just shut it down and not use it. If it's using more water, power, and sewer than what it's taking in, why continue wasting the money on it when you could be using it for your parking lot or swine barn or the horse stalls? I remember in previous meetings that had you guys upgraded your horse area, that maybe the draft horse show would come back, like things like that. That's what
and I think that's
about.
I think that's a good point to say, what are the things that you could attract to the fair that would make money to help with the improvements? And I know one of the questions has been in the community about the house that's on the property, what does it bring in? What is the value to the fair of having that there? Is there an adjustment? And I think that's part of the idea of sitting down and doing the plan, but with a little bit of transparency on what is the operational budget and what is the reserve and where do we pin that money towards in terms of future development of the fair. For example, if bringing the draft horse back would increase income to the fair, is that a better goal than that could potentially help fund other things at a faster rate than maybe? And I think in part, some of what we have there is these are services to attract other people to come. And so if there is no RV campground, then you might not get some people to come to participate in the rodeo or other things like that. So
The
correct
RV
me if I'm wrong, but
The
go ahead, Tim.
RV campground also, like for the rodeo, those cowboys and stock, the people that come with the rodeo have to have a place to camp, we section off the RV park for them to use. Same thing with the fair, we have 4-H, and we have barn supervisors, we have judges and things that use that RV park at that time. So we need the RV park. But the good thing is the rest of the year, we can rent that RV park out and it actually does make us money.
But it doesn't make enough to pay for the power, water and sewer.
It does for the RV park, sure, but it doesn't make
Not for the
enough to
whole
pay for the
facility.
whole thing, no. And
Can I ask you to clarify? Making enough money to pay a bill isn't making money, it's just you broke even. Does it actually end up with a profit after the bill is paid?
if you're looking at just the RV park,
I mean, cause that's what she's asking.
Yeah.
You correct me if I'm wrong, Amy, but
Yeah.
she's asking not, does it pay for itself in that you're not having to put out money for people being able to hook up? She's asking, are you getting a profit out of having it? Cause if you're just breaking even outside of rodeo, why break even if it's not necessary? Because there is an operational cost. For example, with staffing and maintenance, that would be considered leakage from your budget if you don't have a profit from it.
Well, one
Am-
thing-
Did I,
Exactly, and same with
Okay.
like renting, I mean,
I think
you have the capabilities,
I think
I
the
think,
RV
of making
park,
a lot of
I
money.
think the
with the
RV
facility.
park is necessary. For some of the reasons I stated, but Sam, do you have?
Yeah, I have my computer on black, I only pull up, so
So the profit and loss was just published in the Daily Bee, I think today.
Okay, I looked
Uh,
for that and I never seen it, so.
I know, I think we all were looking for where that was.
Just reading the email from the Daily Bee.
Oh yeah, the Daily Bee doesn't come out today, so it probably won't be till tomorrow.
Oh, November 16th.
Saturday.
So, can pull up the legal description. But part of the problem with, I mean, yes, the campground does make money. And if you look at the bill from the portion, I mean, the biggest one is the arena watering. So no, it doesn't make enough money to support all of the events that are being watered through the arena. But as far as its own entity, yeah, it does. It's probably one of the most profitable because it has the lowest expense in repairs and maintenance.
Okay, so then are you guys renting the arena? Then since you know that the arena is one of your biggest costs, are you actually renting it to make a profit or to barely break even?
Well, that goes back to most of the rental for the arena is 4-H event, horse camp.
You don't do any rodeo, nobody does any barrel racing, nothing there throughout the year like they used to?
They
You
just
don't have any sortings, you don't have any events except for 4-H that uses that arena?
during fair, yes, there are events and there is what's it called? Northwest, that just started having events there, been very successful this year.
And of course, at the rodeo too, when we put on the rodeo, people pay admission, so we do make money with the rodeo.
But you're talking renting.
Yeah,
Yeah, just
You're
renting or just anybody, like I said, outside of the fair, like I said, the fair is a big thing. Everybody purges in, everybody loves the fair. I'm just talking about outside of the fair, when other people utilize the big building, like I said, for the wolf banquet. You know, you don't want to run them off, but I thought in a couple meeting, like a few months ago, you guys had decided to really raise the rates. So
But that was prior to seeing this.
so you had not been
we
able to
didn't-
factor that number in.
Correct. So yes, we are making money when we rent buildings, the arena for outside events. I mean, if not, why would we
Right.
even do that?
Mhm.
So we are trying to get to that point of looking at it like a business and being absolutely proactive in moving forward. But now looking at this, we would have to go back and substantially raise the rates on the outdoor arena. And would it be to the point where we would not be able to rent the outdoor arena? It is where we have to, is truly where we're at.
Can I let, Christina, did you have something to say? No, go ahead. You don't have to stand up or anything. That's why I wanted to send the microphone back.
Christina Nicholas Anderson for the record. I would just like to recap the finances as I understand them as the fairgrounds was granted 210,000 this year for facilities and ribbons compared to all previous years when they only received 20,000. And I believe that was so they could fix the bleachers, which were pretty outdated. And additionally, they received 455,864 for payroll and benefits for their staff. Staff of 6, I believe. So that brought the total that the county paid to the fairgrounds to a total of $636,104. And I think those were the numbers you were trying to get at, Jessica. So that's how much the county is already supporting the fair at.
We need one disclaimer though, is part of that money were funds that were brought in by the fair, not a request from the county budget to pay,
No,
but
So we're levying for those funds.
right.
right. But the $20,000 for ribbons was a different dollar amount.
It was still always part of their levy.
Okay,
That's different from like their scholarships or whatever.
okay.
Now I'd like to address some of the spending as they're asking us to take on the continued bills, and that's where I have a little bit of concern. And I'd like to preface it by saying the new manager and his assistants have made huge progress since being there, and I see the fair really moving in the right direction. And that's really nice as a taxpayer to see. And I see the board working with him better than they were initially, and I think that's a compliment to the entire team. But as I read the minutes, and I was reading minutes to their recent meetings in preparation for this meeting, on October 28th, their meeting minutes reflect under new business, section 3B as in boy, that the board approved the cost to pay up to 6 staff members and up to 7 board members to fly to a conference, get a hotel, and to attend a ceremony recognizing former fair manager Rhonda Livingstone. She was receiving a prestigious award. But because the cost of the attendance is fairly expensive, the board approved to fly down up to these 13 people, the flight and the motel just to attend the receipt of the award, and then to fly back. I don't know if one person is going or 13 people. I'm glad they didn't approve for everybody to attend the conference because that would have bankrupted them as far as I'm concerned.
Can I ask you to clarify? You're saying on October 28th, they voted and approved 13 members of
Between
fair
staff and fair
and
board.
fair to fly. So can we, so if that question is asked directly, can we, after you say everything related to that, can we allow the board to respond so that we do it in real time?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So the minutes reflect, and I was there as well, when that was discussed, that, anybody who desired to go from the board or the staff, the board would pay for it. And they just had to get their request to Mark, the manager, who would then make all the arrangements for that trip. And then they could be there to support that. And what I'd like to add is I think it's very admirable that they want to support our former fair manager and also her daughter, who is a manager at another fair. But it would seem that sending one representative from our fair and our fair board and coffers paying for that would be reasonable, and that if additional members wanted to go in support, it should be at their own dime rather than expecting it to come out of the fair budget. So if you wanted to respond to that before I continue, that seems reasonable.
Okay. The chair,
We have 3 people going for one day. And, yeah.
can you tell us the total cost of that? What is the budget for that? And I'll add, as a person being asked to pay the bill for something for the fair, it's a fantastic honor for someone to receive recognition. But the question that has to be put when you're talking about taxpayer money, why would taxpayers pay for 3 people to fly down to witness someone receiving the award out of the budget, especially if the budget is telling the county we can't afford to pay for what we need? So do we have a total cost of this trip? Estimated total cost of this trip. Location of this trip. 5,000 for all 3 people.
I'll say the motion during the fair board meeting was a motion to give our fair manager discretion to send some folks down. Didn't, at that particular time, it wasn't who, or it was anybody on board that could make it.
It wasn't that we were all going.
No, correct. If I
So,
could just,
so I'm gonna, did you want to say something else?
yeah, no one knew who could go, who's scheduled to go, and we need to be able to make a decision. The board needed to be able to make a decision at that time. So they made the motion accordingly, knowing that everybody wasn't going to go down there. And my staff wasn't going to go down there. It's at the same time as a convention that for us to learn a lot of information and gain a lot of information on how to make more money and how to be more self-sufficient. It's the same time as one of those conventions, and we're not able to go. We got one person going to the convention the whole time, and 3 people to go down and give this to recognize there and be there for the family and everything. So it wasn't like 13 people were gonna go. We just needed to have a motion to be able to let us pay it, knowing that not everybody was gonna go down.
But you did, so I hear what you're saying is that you didn't expect 13 people, but you motioned that 13 people could go.
No, that's not what the
So
motion, I
what
can
was-
read to you what it says.
Okay,
It says that Ben made a motion to approve fair board member or staff, if approved by Mark, that wish to attend the event to contact Mark and arrangements will be made. And so several of us on the board had already said we weren't going. So that was understood and knew that those people weren't gonna go from the board, and Mark wasn't going to send 7 people from his office. That was already, and with lack of having who was going and who wasn't, that's why that type of a motion was made.
as a taxpayer, I'm gonna say the idea of spending tax money when we're saying the budget is tight to watch someone receive an award is.
But it's at the IAFE, and the IAFE is where there are multiple classes that people attend to get us to exactly what you're wanting us to do, be more self-sufficient and get to, and yes, it happened to be part of this prestigious thing, but we have been sending people to IAFE and RMEF for every year for years.
So
I'm gonna interject.
I'm gonna clarify here before I go back to her. The motion was about sending 3 people, and what the manager confirmed is to watch someone receive the award and come back that day. So the motion saying we're going to send 4 people to the conference to help build the process is not what I'm hearing what happened. The motion includes 1 person attending the conference and 3 people watching someone receive the award and flying back. So how long is the conference? How many days is the conference? 4 days. So we're not going down.
Every member will be there for 2 days. The conference starts on Sunday, goes through Wednesday, they will be there Wednesday or Sunday and Monday. And flying home Monday after.
We're flying. When you look at it, if you're a taxpayer, if the convention is 4 days and we're not staying 4 days, we're picking the day someone's going to receive an award. The optics from the county is we're flying 2 people down. It happens to be at the conference, but we're not actually staying for the valuable courses of the conference. We're sending people to watch someone receive the award. That's essentially what she is saying is, why are we sending 3 people? Because if you took 3 people to watch an award, could you have afforded 1 person to attend all of the conference? Which means we're not really going for the conference, we're going and we're.
The conference had a set price if you're gonna attend the entire thing, or you could get daily rates. There's other costs involved with going to the conference, such as hotel rooms. And that kind of.
What are the classes that people signed up to take for the 2 days that you're going? Who's going?
I will be going.
Okay, what are the classes that you signed up for, Ben?
You can sign up when you're there. One of the classes I did have to sign up for beforehand.
Yeah, and so it's a convention where you go down to it and you can pick and choose whatever. You don't have to sign up. You
I
just-
understand what it is, but I'm trying to elicit the idea of, that's how IAC works. You go to whatever class is there. I look at what classes are offered. You don't sign up for them. You show up when it is. So what I'm trying to elicit is there's a community concern of, are we actually going to the conference for the sake of the conference, or are we going to the conference to witness someone receive an award and using taxpayer money to say it's adjacent to a conference? Did we pick days where they were the courses that we needed? If we were going for the conference, for example, and we couldn't afford all 4 days, why wouldn't one person go Sunday, Monday, the other person go Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we captured everything a conference had to offer for the number of people? Because if I am on a budget and I need the information that the conference has to offer, but I can't afford 4 days, why are we sending 4 people on the same 2 days and not using all 4 days of a conference if we're truly going for the conference? And that is where I have to say the thing she's bringing forward is a valid question of, you're asking somebody to pay bills. What is the reason that we're spending that money? And if I was on a budget of, I can't afford everybody to go, I would be splitting my people up, not just for the day someone's receiving an award, because part of what you guys are managing is also the political capital of the trust of a budget that the people are giving their money to through taxes and donations. And for me, when she said it, I will say, I'm like, why are we doing that? But if that was, we didn't have enough for everybody to go, why are we not splitting it up amongst the whole conference to utilize the idea that the conference exists? And then the answer is the award is being given on probably Monday. Christina.
Thank you. As I continue, and I don't know if this is standard throughout the county, but I know that each full-time staff member receives $400 per budget year for clothing or boots. And I believe the part-time staff receives around 200 or 250. And I know that's new this year. And while I think that's a nice gesture, again, that adds up. And when they can't pay the utility bills, I look at that as an extra perk. I know at the last board meeting, they approved, the fair manager had asked for like $100 or $120 to be able to gift his staff members logo jackets for Christmas. And by the time the board voted on it, they approved $2,000 for him to buy his 6 staff members coats for Christmas. By the time the vote went through, they decided not to call it a gift for some reason. So it's appreciation, but regardless, the staff there work hard. They've been through a lot, so much. That's an understatement. And they probably deserve a lot more than logo coats. But to me as a taxpayer, since they're already getting a clothing allowance, it seemed excessive to give them $2,000 to get 6 coats. And again, if they're asking us to pay the utility bills, that $2,000 could go towards that. And again, no disrespect to the workers. And I think that Mark was being very generous, even considering that for them. And I also wonder if other departments do that, if that's just standard. And I think the fair operates differently anyways. We know that they like the way they do things and how the manager has to get permission from the fair board to even tie his shoes. It seems like sometimes that's different than how other county operations work. And I know they have their own tax ID, so where I just heard they're not their own tax district. I know they operate differently and their rules are always different, but I know that like if you look at other fairgrounds in the area, they do use a lot of volunteers, and they have a lot of beautification projects, and they do fundraisers and cowboy balls and all this stuff to do a lot of things. And so I heard Jody talk about the Spade family and how much they contribute, and I'm in awe of that. And I just feel like before they ask us to pay more bills, maybe we need to be looking at some capital projects. And I think the fact the county gave them money for the bleachers this year is like so cool. And maybe that would have been a project that the community should have contributed towards, and that could have gone towards their utilities. I don't know. I'm not second guessing it.
Before you go off of that, are you gonna go on to a different topic?
Yes,
Can I stop you on this one?
sure.
So can the board clarify, you guys, and do you have a standard operating procedure is gonna be one of my questions. And you clarify me if I say it wrong. There's an allotment for full-time employees for $400 a year for clothing and part-time at $200. And then did you guys vote to spend $2,000 budget on logo coats for Bonner County Fair staff? And do you have a standard operating procedure for this?
We did, we don't. We gave him a budget of $2,000, and we know he's not gonna use the whole budget.
You gave a budget of 2,000, and so for
We have
on
to
my
spend-
end, for my end, you give a budget of 2,000, I say you spent 2,000. And so are the $2,000 logo jackets, was it discussed as Christmas gifts for staff?
Can I add something? This is Jessica Stephanie, Controller. So when you guys are talking about budgeted amounts, so when you allocated $2,000 to let Mark order jackets for staff, are you expecting to use money received from us here at the county, or are you using enterprise funds that you raised during the fair and rodeo or an event that you held?
That's correct, enterprise funds. We have not requested any money from the county.
That is
This
true. I
fiscal
can
year.
speak to that. They have not requested any money so far
And
this
I-
fiscal year from the
I'd like to
county.
clarify that the $400 per person is not given to them. It is they have no, I just want to clarify this because I think this is pretty sad. My staff are walking around with holes in their shirts and holes in their pants. They have no uniforms. And so I established that they could get up to, if they provided receipts and established a process, present that to the board for reimbursement, up to $400 per fiscal year, if they wanted to do it. Right, that hardly buys one pair of shoes or a pair of boots a season. And so that's not $400 carte blanche and $200 to a part-time person, just giving them cash for no reason. That's them buying something and allowing us to reimburse them out of enterprise funds. So they got clothes to work outside and inside of the fairgrounds.
For me, I don't see a problem with a uniform because we do that in other fields. I see when we don't have an SOP that identifies it so that it's not so that it's very clear and in writing that that's what we're doing. And then a compare contrast is, for example, for me, there's a lot of people that need to wear boots because they're out mucking out stalls. Is there an opportunity for us to say, we are going to partner with an outfitter that would help reduce the cost associated, and then we can address it in that way? If we're just saying do a reimbursement, are we ensuring that we have a plan that reduces the budget for something, but also addressing that the wear and tear on people's clothes needs to be addressed, and it's a higher quality of an item that people need to wear when they're doing physical labor? That's why I asked for what is the SOP on that? especially when it comes to, and I don't know this answer, but, a $2,000 budget to gift jackets to staff, comes to a question of, can you do that with tax money? Did anybody research that question?
Can we do it with non-levy funds?
Can you as a,
Sponsor money that we sponsored.
No, I would say generated from, again, the campground events, facility rental.
There is an SOP. Let me answer your first question. There is an SOP that they established and the board approved shortly after I started here regarding the reimbursement of the allotments that were provided. So that was set up. There is an SOP that was created for that. In regards to the
Christmas
jacket,
gift thing?
the logo jackets is, these aren't gifts. We're not buying them penny loafers, and we're not buying them turkeys or anything. It's technically clothes, they're employee clothes, right? If it was anywhere else, case in point, if this is the sheriff's office, they would already been issued a jacket for the winter. Our staff are not issuing anything.
so I want to be clear, because I can hear the irritation. I asked him how it was discussed and he said Christmas gift. That's how she said she heard it. I asked the chair of the board for confirmation of what your discussion was. You guys don't record your meetings and I wasn't in there. He said it was discussed as Christmas
We
gift.
discussed it as Christmas gift, but decided that no, it wouldn't be a gift, and it would be a. What's the term?
Appreciation, it's a carol.
Really,
And actually, what we're doing is killing two birds with one stone.
it's not even that.
We're providing them a fairgrounds logo jacket as an appreciation.
So my question is the legality of it. So as I can't receive more than, isn't it $50 on something? And so at a value of 120, can we do that as the county? I don't know that answer. And so that's why I'm asking how it was discussed. And if you guys work through the description during your meeting and it says Christmas gift, you're going to get, it doesn't matter if that's not what you end on the word. If you said it in your meeting, and this might be a way to discuss your meeting, if you say, should we buy Christmas gifts in our meeting and buy people jackets at 120, even though there's a practical reason for a jacket, you're going to get people of the public to say, why am I paying for a Christmas gift for staff? That's going to happen, and it's not an unreasonable thing to ask. I completely understand what you're saying, but I also, changing it from Christmas gift to staff appreciation, the dollar amount has a legal question of, can we do that? I don't know the answer to that because the fare is a little bit different. As a county employee, it's $50. When we give somebody their $100 gift card, they actually have to pay taxes on that. And it's a different way. So that has a question. That's what I'm asking. And that's part of an SOP of, did we vet this through legal before we said we were going to do that? Is there a way to accomplish? There's a reason to, for example, Road and Bridge came to me and said, Asia, my guys need hats. We would like to have a Bonner County logo hat. I said, I don't really know, and we don't really have money to be doing that like that. However, there's value for them to have that hat in the community, because in the community see who they are when they're working on the side of the road. And so that's something that they're going to make a plan for moving forward. And so it's completely reasonable to say the people on staff need to wear a jacket, they're outside. But how you do it is my question. And I question the legality of $120 jacket as a staff appreciation out of the fair budget without having cleared it through legal for the dollar amount, because I don't know that answer. And it's not they're not buying it, the budget is buying it. And in part, from a community standpoint, what Christina is saying is, we're doing these things which sound good, that it's not, I understand what you're doing, but then we're saying we can't afford. And in some ways, from a public use standpoint, it's, we're buying what, there's a reason to do this, but we have to make sure we're doing it the right way. Which for me, this jacket purchase needs a legal review to make sure we're not violating the dollar amount, because our dollar amount is $50 as a gift. And then greater than that, people have to pay taxes. So I think that have you received did you guys already order this? can we have a request that you guys send this through the prosecutor's office to review this aspect, because that's my question. I'll ask the clerk's office comptroller. You guys have anything different than what I added as a question? Your microphone's next to you.
When you guys have that review done, I would specify which funds you're spending. Because I think there is a delineation for them with their outside profit-making businesses versus levied tax money that they're spending. And I think that they need to be very, very clear when in the meetings, when you're gonna allocate funds, be very direct on like, this is tax money, this is levied funds that we're receiving, and this is what we intend to spend them on versus the other, but I think getting a legal opinion probably wouldn't be a bad thing.
And within our budget, you've seen our budget. The money that comes from levied money is itemized out as to exactly how that is going to be spent.
It's not available for anything else but those items. Levy money isn't. The money that we've gotten from the county, even though it's in our pool, is all itemized out.
Your last year's budget, does it include this line item? This expenditure of the $2,000 though? And I think that's where, when you're going through the approval of a budget, if it doesn't hit the legal review, this is something that was decided, and this is the difference of a real budget, because this would have already been discussed and captured in the last cycle, because we're finished, we just did the budget. And if we didn't allocate, for example, a dollar amount to buy coats for staff in this way, that's where the hiccup comes, because to me, that's a legal review of the allocation. Not that, I'm not saying you can or can't, I'm saying this was not discussed, and there's a legality thing that I think needs to be confirmed before we do it. And then from the public view, it's the people that make the decisions to do it. That's for the public to give their voice on whether you like that allocation or not. But for me, that needs a legal review on to make sure we're cleared to do that. Did you have another thing before we?
So please know I'm not trying to be a curmudgeon about this. I've been pretty quiet in most of the fair board meetings lately. I think you guys have really made some steps. It's just that as a taxpayer and with the history that the fair has had with money issues over the last couple of years and some of the devastation that's gone with that, I've been fairly hyper vigilant about just kind of watching the numbers. And so some of these have stood out for me in light of the fact that we're here tonight and asking that you support the fair by paying for these things. I just want to say that I feel as a taxpayer that we have been supportive of the fair and buying the new bleachers, and they're doing some great things with lighting and some other things. They've gone after some grants and they're doing really great on that. I just feel like before we start spending some of these other things, maybe there's a way that they can partner on paying their own bills. And that's all I'd like to say in consideration. So thank you for that.
I thank you for presenting your information in a respectful manner. I think they're valid questions. I think the fair has answered some things, and we have just a couple of things I think we need to check off of your list. Any other comments from the public before we close out? No other comments. Anybody else from the fair?
Have we accomplished anything?
No, actually, I think that you have accomplished something, because the board can't make a decision here. This was a workshop to hear what your guys' perspective was. So this was not an action, this was a discussion. And so what I was going to summarize is what we have accomplished and what the next steps are. Anything else from board members? Okay, so from a commissioner side, what the board is asking the board of commissioners to do, the fair board is requesting that the fair groundwater sewer be continued to be paid indefinitely, essentially year over year is what the request is. There is also a concern from the fair that the board actually make a decision on who's responsible for the RV dump station water sewer. The fair is also requesting the board make a decision on the playground. And so those are things that will be placed on the board of Commissioner's agenda to make decisions, so there's a clear path moving forward on those items, because we need to be able to budget from somebody's budget. With respect to the extension office, the extension office is going to meet with our comptroller to identify whether or not they have room in the budget to pay their own bills associated with electricity and water that are currently being paid by the fairgrounds budget. The fairgrounds are going to take a look at what is the average cost of that building, so that there can be a request next fiscal year to clearly identify what dollar amount does that budget need to set aside to pay for its own, so that it's not just a redistribution between the two. I can tell you that I'm reasonably comfortable on playground what to do moving forward. On the RV dump station, it's a little bit bigger of a question on that one. The other thing that I've asked from the fair side is that the fair provide a one-year plan of the future of the fair with the goals. To reach out to legal regarding the $2,000 budget for staff for the jackets and comptroller is asking that you be clear on which fund that money would come from, so that we can just say we've cleared that internal audit on something like that. And I would give that future warning on when we're using money out of a specific fund and we didn't specifically commented on it. And good internal control is to reach out to the comptroller and legal so that we get a sign of approval. And it's not a sign of what is the community's concern. It's a passing your internal control for making sure we're using the money that we're receiving correctly. The other thing from the fair is if you can identify the 1 year or 3 year or 5 year plan, if you can bring that forward to the board, but also of the fair board, but also the board of commissioners, so that we can see what the recommendation was. The other issue is, can we have a quarterly meeting where there's open dialogue about these issues, which you guys have agreed to, but identifying what that schedule would be, as well as for you guys to go back as a fair board in your own executive discussion, whether or not you want to have a commissioner liaison on your group. That's between you guys, and what does that communication schedule look like? So I think that's a lot of accomplished. It doesn't mean it's solved. It means we're moving forward in a direction of transparency and understanding the direction.
I have all of those same agenda, also maybe action items, but also I have redefined line between BOCC and Fair Board.
Oh, yes.
So how do you see that happening?
That is for
We
you guys to
discuss-
decide,
we
because
discuss-
that's why I'm intentionally saying the question without asking for an answer, because this is a workshop and you guys are your own board. I think that you guys have to identify that communication schedule, and you have to identify, part of it was you guys need to understand the rules that govern the fair board and what those lines are, because one of the things the chair mentioned was there's a lot that is not understood and some of it requires a legal explanation. It's incumbent upon the fair board members to ensure that they have that understanding as you move forward with decisions about the fair. And that's a huge thing to really understand what those lines are. And then one of the other suggestions in that line were, if I as a commissioner were to come forward and say, I want you to buy $5,000 worth of this. What is your operating procedure that tells me, how do I have that communication with your board? And how should you guys say, Asia shouldn't be coming to me as an individual. I need to spit that back to the Board of Commissioners for a full board review versus just doing something. That needs to be drawn very clearly. And I think you guys kind of understand that with the sunshade thing, but it needs to be more transparent. So I know if I see here a suggestion, how do I get it to you guys for review? I shouldn't be making that decision as a single commissioner. You guys are the fair board. Does that answer that one?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we kind of have the same takeaway here.
Yep. Anything else?
Seems good.
I think that in closing, that you guys have made a lot of progress and it's a lot more of a cohesive board. And I think you in your minds have the direction of the fair. I think we need to start putting it into the documents that allow us to follow along with what your goals are and the vision of the fair. And sometimes we hear support in the community that we could be pushing that direction, but we need to know the direction so that we can help move us in the right direction. I will tell you that the Kootenai County Fair is agreeable to offer any service, to include coming up to Bonner County and giving some education and training, that we have not historically accepted from them. And I would encourage you guys to look at that available option because it's free. And they're available to do that. And as we restructure as a board of commissioners and you guys develop your operating procedure, free and the proximity is worth taking a look at. All right, with that being said, it is, I'm saying 1934, and this workshop is adjourned.